On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what's in today's show, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, in this exciting episode we meet a young man called Daniel who has started up his own cryptozoological and Fortean research group in Somerset. And he's invited me and Richard along to his second open day at the end of November, and we're certainly going to be there. And he has done some very interesting research in his neighbourhood, which is part of the Quantock Hills, where he has come up with some very interesting evidence which is reminiscent of some of the stuff which we found at Bowland Lake all those years ago.
I really like the old credits.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean. What's that over there?
So, Rossiter, the old mate, what's new down at the Youth Outreach Centre in Brixton? What activities have you been getting up to with the kids?
Oh, Barry, we are smashing new activity with the kids. We're getting them doing useful job, dog walking. They're dog walking. Oh yeah, they're dog walking, and they are walking the XL bullies.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of an organisation called the Centre for Fortean Zoological, which is, or at least we believe it is, the largest, longest standing, and we like to think best, cryptozoological and mystery animal research group in the world, at least the English-speaking world. And every Saturday afternoon at 3, and as you'll have noticed if you look at your watches, it's Saturday afternoon and it's 3, we put out a show called On the Track, which features a mishmash of hard science, weird shit and surreality. What's surreality? Well, let's ask an expert from the past.
You want to know what surreality is? Well, just look around you. The world has gone completely insane. And if you want to know what surreality is, well, that is.
Well, to start off this week's show, I've got an interesting story that comes from Richard. First of all, by the way, I do apologise for being slightly hindered at the moment, but I have a dog sitting on my lap, and furthermore, I have a dog who is refusing to move in order to let me record this show, so I'm having to use the dog as my keyboard stand, which makes things really rather difficult. However, most of you will, I'm sure, be aware that in August, Richard, John Hare, Dr. Chris Clark and Dr. Darren Naish went to Tajikistan looking for evidence to support the theory that the ghoul, a allegedly ancient hominid, is still found there. And they also were looking for evidence to support the theory that the Caspian tiger was not hunted to extinction there about 50 years ago. They came back with both, and if you haven't already seen it, I strongly recommend you watch last week's show and the full-length movie that we did on the subject of the expedition. But within days of Richard returning to the UK, he was in Bath for the annual conference of ASAP, the Association for Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena, which are probably the best known Fortean research group in the world, and jolly nice chaps. And whilst he was there, he caught up with Stu Neviklle from Fortean Times.
Make sure this is recording. There we go.
Hello.
Hi,
Don't start.
Stu Neviklle of Fortean Times fame. Can you tell us a little bit about what your talk is going to be about here at ASAP tomorrow?
I can. Basically, I'm looking at 56 years of the Patterson-Gimlin film. Because there's been some recent strides, actually. There's Bill Munns, which you may have heard of, has managed to do a whole LiDAR of the entire area, which has actually brought up some pretty good results. And interestingly, the results it's come up with has proved and disproved some other stuff. But the main thing I'm going to be looking at is the cultural impact of it, and the fact that 56 years on, it is still causing as much controversy as it did the very first day it was shown, which is quite amazing. You know, for a bit of film, that's good going.
And no other piece of alleged Sasquatch footage has come anywhere near looking as good as this, or still having that kind of impact after all these years.
No, it hasn't. That's exactly right. I mean, basically all the stuff that looks really, really good tends to turn out to be fake, you know, or is even more controversial. I think that's probably the wrong word, but it just doesn't look as convincing. Something about Patty feels different, for want of a better, whether it's true, whether it's false. It feels different from all the other ones.
Yeah, it does. I've never seen another piece of film that convinces me like that. And I've worked with great apes.
Exactly.
It has the presence of a non-human primate.
It absolutely does, and it's something I touch on in the presentation. Is if at the time the technology didn't exist effectively to make it a suit that convincing. Even John Chambers of Planet of the Apes fame looked at that and said, "I couldn't do that." Even with studio money, I couldn't do that, you know. And it's basically, and the guy who did say he could do it, Philip Morris, was offered £250,000 by National Geographic to recreate it, and he couldn't do it. He bottled it. So there you go. You know, it's
every single time they try and recreate it, like they did on that awful X Creatures program.
I touch on that as well.
Yeah, it looks garbage, doesn't it?
It looks like Keith Harris's Cuddles.
Yeah,
you know, and it just looks about as convincing, to be honest. It looks absolute crap. So yeah, I'll be touching on that one as well. And they've never managed to do it. You know, that fluidity. And I go into all the analysis done by Don Grieve at the Royal Biomechanical Institute, and of course John Napier wrote a whole book about it. And they were both orthopaedic specialists, and they're looking at it going, do you know what? It's moving so fluidly. You know, but a lot of things depends on the speed of the film and so on. I mean, if it was at 16 or 14 frames per second, it actually alters the gait to such a degree, you know, and stuff like that. And I do touch on this stuff. The important thing I'm going to touch on, but basically what I'm going to do in the entire film, I'm just going to talk about the film itself. There's a whole lot of legends that have grown up around it about the time frame and how things were done and so forth. No, I'm just going to focus on the minute of footage we've actually got, because it's a minute long. People think it's 20 seconds, turn. There's actually a bit more than that. So we'll talk about the whole thing, we'll talk about the whole context of it, but we'll concentrate on that because that's the only actual evidence we've got. Everything else is hearsay. Let's look at the film.
Yeah, I have to say, I think the thing in that footage is an unknown primate. It's not a man in a monkey suit.
Yeah.
And that comes from years and years of working with apes.
Yeah. It is. It's funny. The only thing I know that's, for the number of people I know, the first time they saw it was as a kid, and they actually felt the hairs go on the back of their neck. And thought, wow, that's something amazing. You know, myself included. But the only thing I know other that's done that is actually the Sierra sounds. So the sounds, the Sasquatch chatter. Yeah. The number of people I know, first time they hear that, go, what the? They don't go, look at that. They actually go, Jesus, that's. Whoa. It does. It affects you in a funny kind of way. And I've seen it suggested. I can't remember who it was who said it. It might be Might have been Jeff Meldrum actually said. It might be because it's so similar to us, but it isn't us. And it's a familiarity, and he said perhaps it's a monkey brain thing. We're recognising a competitor, which we haven't done since the Neanderthal age. We're now recognising, oh God, it's another one of us. And that's a very freaky thing. We're not the only humans. You know, if it's another human, ooh, that's interesting.
The fossil record and the genetic record suggests these things should be there.
Yeah, of course they should.
Absolutely.
You know, this is the thing. It's not a totally alien animal. No. Something like that did exist. You know, Gigantopithecus or whatever. Denisovan even. It could, whatever it is. And of course, all the analysis that they've done that doesn't turn out to be a goat or a bloke from Idaho. You know, it does say unknown primate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and the problem is, as you know better than anybody, every time that there's DNA evidence sent off to any university anywhere, you just very rarely hear anything about it again.
Yeah.
But luckily now, because so many programs have done it, and you get the likes of Todd Dissertel involved, you know, then they're actually saying, no, actually, this is what we come up with. Even Brian Sykes did his best, I think. You know.
Well, there was some eDNA taken from a lake in Bhutan in 2018, and I got in touch with the French geneticist that analysed it, and she said it was it shared 90% of its genetic makeup with humans, but the company that got it destroyed it.
We hear this a lot. You know, it's kind of, you know, and this is the problem, because there's now these rumours, aren't there, of black operations being involved, and this is something that mountain monsters, the bloody mountain monsters, decided to do. They started to get sort of like shadowy government agencies following them and saying, oh, you know, and they're trying to prevent them from finding the truth and all this kind of bollocks. You know, and this is always something that sits very badly with me. Having asked, I spoke with Lauren Coleman a while back, and in fact, and yourself, if I remember rightly, and Carl and Adam Davis, and sort of said, look, do you think there's official knowledge of Bigfoot? And Lauren Coleman is probably the best placed of the lot to say about American knowledge. Was when he said, I don't know, I don't think they care. He said if it's not carrying a gun and not a threat, they don't give a monkeys about it, to be honest, pardon the pun. He said there's plenty of rangers and soldiers and God knows what else, border guards who report these things, and cops. He said, but on a governmental level, they can give a toss. You know, it's basically it's no more a concern than chipmunks as far as they're concerned. You know, so it's I doubt there is black ops. Then the stories don't like the vet rescuing one from a fire and all that kind of crap. You know, and there was one on what was it, on Bigfoot and Beyond not too long ago. I don't know if you heard it, and somebody claimed that there was a big car crash, a big pile up, and at the back of a box van came basically a wrapped up body of a Sasquatch.
No,
which then the Marines then turned up and recovered in seconds, and it's all like, really? You know what I mean? Yeah, and you hear stuff like that, but I think that's just a wider thing about the conspiracy and the big state. You know, and they've extended beyond the UFOs now, and they're now onto crypto. Yeah. So I think now you can ignore that kind of crap. But you know, it's but I do think that there's possibly more known at a scientific level, which is being kept back, possibly for fear of ridicule. Perhaps a lot, you know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think I certainly don't think there's a deliberate cover-up. I think the DNA going missing is just incompetence, and rather than anything sinister.
Oh yeah, it's always the same, isn't it? Never ascribe to malevolence what can be what can be ascribed to incompetence. That's basically it, isn't it? You know, cock up rather than conspiracy. Quite agree, but it's But come back to Patterson-Gimlin, I don't think we've seen anything as good as you say, and I'm just waiting for the day when we do see something. The problem is now, because it's so easy to do really convincing fakery, that has to be the one. The real kicker for me is each time they enhance it, they still can't see the zip. Now, in the days when it was filmed, nobody even dreamed you'd be able to do the kind of stuff that they can do with images now. Yeah. It wasn't even in anybody's consciousness. And yet, whatever they do to it, you know, I mean, Chambers again, you know, the close-up stuff he did now, they still can't really do better than that. You know, it's there's all kinds of stuff going on there. But I'm looking forward to the talks. I managed to condense it down half an hour. These are the, you know, and I'm 89% sure that it is a Sasquatch. Yeah. I'm 10% not sure, but then I think to be 100% in would bias it too much. So I'm being a good Fortean there.
Cheers. Thank.
And now I want to introduce you to Daniel Barnett, a charming young man who, from his home in Somerset, has started up his own Crypto-Zoological and Fortean research group. He has a podcast. He has gathered some very interesting evidence on one particular project, and he's here with us today on CFZ TV. Daniel, tell me about your group. What's it called and what does it do?
So my group is called the Mythical Legends Podcast and Expedition. So we started this group probably 5 years ago, and it started off as a complete different name. We actually started off as a filming company in our family, and we called it Duo Studios. And we moved on from that, and we are now doing expeditions, podcasting, and it's been amazing, I'll say. And so if I tell you a bit about the podcast, so we have interviewed many people to do witnesses, scientists, researchers, all to do with Bigfoot, but it's an open podcast to all cryptids. But my main focus is Bigfoot. And I have actually found stuff myself, which I'll go into. It's a very detailed story, and it's currently happening now. But the podcast is a side thing for information and things to come in. And I don't know if you've heard of a scientist called Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum.
Yes, of course.
Who is amazing, and I'm quite
Really nice man.
He is, yeah, and we've interviewed him twice on the podcast, which has been amazing, and we hope to keep the podcast going. Now the expedition is a very long story, but very rewarding, I'll say. I would say we started into this probably about 3 years ago now, when I was sat with my granddad and we were watching Expedition Bigfoot, and my cousin was sat next to me, and I looked at him and went, I want to do that. I want to go out looking for Bigfoot. I want to go and gain the experience. And we both said amazing. So we picked an animal that we knew was here to gain the experience. So we were looking for deer, and we did 6 long expeditions, and we eventually found it us, and it was an amazing experience. And then I said to my my co-organizer, I said, I want to move on to cryptids now. Now I've gained the experience. So we moved on to cryptids, and that's when I started the podcast to gain the information. And I looked on the map surrounding our area and went, right, where is a forest that, 1, doesn't have many people, 2, has a water source next to it, and has loads of animals. So we drove to this forest, and we were going in search of the big cat. And we were going to see where it might live, where possible habitats will be for it. Now we were walking up this ridge, and my partner Jill Roberts, who is also my nan, looked over on the floor, and in front of us was an 18-inch print.
Blimey.
And I just froze. Absolutely froze. And I looked at her, she looked at me. We were stood there for half hour. Just stood there.
A cat.
Now, no, 18-inch human footprint.
God.
Yeah. Now that is shocking. Now we were like, okay, we moved on, and we were like, okay, let's just go. Let's go. Think about it. Now we went home, and we decided to go back up and to cover it because we were gonna cast it. So we cover the footprint, and then the next expedition we did, which was 2 days later, we went up and casted it. Now what I can do is I can send you some of the photos of this cast, and I'll explain more about the event. The cast is at the event.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Now, so we were going for the cast, and we were walking down this trail. I realised that there were several indentations that were the same width, same size. I look at Joe and go, look, this isn't a coincidence now. This is something walking. So we were continuing down a ridge, and this was another expedition that we did. By this, we've done about 5 now, and I brought my cousin along. Now he found a tree structure. Now I went, hold on a minute, that actually looks like it. Now I'll explain to you what it was. It was a stick that was up in the air, probably only 3 feet, with a stone on top, with 2 sticks placed on top. Like, let's say deer are coming through, it would trip, which means maybe it's an alarm bell. Now, I've never said, and I plan not to, the Bigfoot is here in the UK. And I'm still very skeptical of it, but I'm not going to rule it out. Now, what then my cousin William turned to me and said, I feel uneasy. And I went, do you? When I walked probably a minute, I then felt it. I've never felt this feeling before. And it's really just weird, where you just feel like you shouldn't be there.
Now, the same thing happened to me well over 50 years ago. It was in the summer of 1969 when my family and I were on holiday on Dartmoor. We had, as you probably know, been living in Hong Kong for most of the 1960s. And my father and I, with my little brother, were out for a walk in one of the wilder parts of Dartmoor. And suddenly all 3 of us felt uneasy. And I grabbed my dad's hand, I was only 9 or 10, and said, Daddy, what is that? And he said, it's called panic. It's what happens when you become part of the area, where you enter part of the area which belongs to the great god Pan. It means he doesn't want you there. And I always remember that, because my father was a far more orthodox Christian than I am. I'm a Christian, and I never pretend not to be, but I'm not really an orthodox anything. But my father told me that, and I've always remembered it. Now, I have seen these photographs to which Daniel is referring. He's asked us not to publicise them at the moment. I'm quite happy not to. And he will be having a conference in a few weeks' time that Richard and I are both going to be at, together with Miss Karen and Mr. Richard, the other Richard, Karen's husband. And I'm very much looking forward to meeting him and the rest of his team, because I think he's doing a remarkably good job. But if you think it's an interesting story so far, just wait till next week when we bring you the next part. It's absolutely gripping, and I'd like to say, Daniel, I am so proud of you, mate. Well done.
if you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And there's the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little house, will tell you. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you won't be told when the next episode's gonna be. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it? Well, before we go, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody but for whom this episode would not have come out. I'd like to thank my producer Louis, but he's still gallivanting around the colonies and won't be back for another week or so. So, the people who actually did put out this episode, Mr. Rosier, because I'm talking about you, instead of gallivanting, you should be here running the show. Ha! The people who actually did put the show out was me and Graham, the long-standing Deputy Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, Gwyn Palmer, our much beloved newly appointed Assistant Director, and this week's guests, who were Richard Freeman, Stu Neviklle and Daniel Barnett. Daniel Barnett has, as I said earlier in the show, an open day coming up, and it is being held, let me see if I can find out where it is, because my memories are utterly rubbish. It's at the Purple Spoons Cafe, Highbridge, Burnham-on-Sea, which is in Somerset, and it's on Saturday the 18th of November, and Richard Freeman will be there, Jackie Tonks will be there, I'll be there, and it's actually going to be the first public speaking thing that I have done since Karina died, just over 3 years ago. Thank you very much for inviting me, Daniel. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it, and how much I'm looking forward to meeting you and your team. I'll be back on Wednesday. What have we got on Wednesday? We have a book review. And I'll be back next Saturday. And what are we going to have next Saturday? Well, for starters, we've got the rest of my conversation with Daniel Barnett, but there'll be other stuff as well. I want to say a big hi and send all my love and all the love of the production team to Miss Maxine, who's currently in hospital, really quite unwell. I hope you get better soon, darling, and I'll see you very, very soon. But as I was saying, next Saturday I'm going to be back with Daniel Barnett once again. So if you're all there watching and I'm there doing all the various stuff I do for the live chat and everything else, guess what? Particularly you, Mr. McQuinnan, if you're there, I'll be